The cold in northern Maine doesn't just chill your skin. It tries to eat your soul. I pressed my forehead against the frosted window pane of my cabin, my breath fogging the glass in rhythmic, shallow bursts. I was a ghost in my own life. 2 years ago, I was rejected. My mate had looked at me, smelled the scent of a useless omega, and walked away without a word. In this pack, being rejected wasn't just a heartbreak. It was a death sentence for your social standing. I was moved to the edge of the forest, to this rotting shack, and told to stay out of sight. Until tonight. The sound that broke the silence wasn't the wind. It was a wet, heavy thud against my porch, followed by a whimper so high-pitched it made my own wolf, dormant for years, howl in the back of my mind. I didn't think. I didn't grab a coat. I threw open the door, and the blizzard screamed into my small kitchen. There, collapsed in a heap of matted fur and crimson snow, were 3 wolves. 2 were small, scarcely more than yearlings, and they were huddled over a massive, midnight black wolf. The scent of silver and wolfsbane was so thick I could taste it on my tongue. They were dying. Oh, gods, I whispered, my voice cracking from disuse. In our pack, sheltering a stranger without the alpha's permission was treason. Sheltering an injured wolf was considered a risk to the bloodline. But as the largest wolf's eyes flickered open, gold, agonizingly bright, and filled with a father's desperation, I knew I was already a dead woman. Because I wasn't going to turn them away. I grabbed the black wolf by the scruff of his neck, using every ounce of my useless, omega strength to drag his massive body over the threshold. My muscles screamed, my palms bled from the friction, but I didn't stop. Help him. One of the smaller wolves shifted, a young boy's voice breaking through a throat raw from crying. Please, miss. They're coming for him. Quiet, I hissed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. If they hear you, we all die. Get inside. Now. I slammed the door and locked it. I had no medicine, no pack support, and no hope. All I had was the forbidden spark of healing magic my grandmother had warned me never to use. The kind that took years off your life every time you called it. I knelt in the blood and the snow, placing my hands on the alpha's shredded chest. I felt my own heartbeat slow as I began to give him mine. I hope you are enjoying the story so far. Please comment down below where you are watching from and tell me how the weather is there today. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. The cabin felt smaller with 4 bodies inside, especially when one of them was a dying alpha whose presence seemed to expand to fill every corner of the room. The air was thick with the copper smell of blood and the sharp, acidic tang of silver. Get me the towels from the bottom drawer, I commanded the 2 boys. They had shifted back into human form. They were barely teenagers, their ribs showing, their eyes wide with a terror that no child should ever know. And the kettle. Fill it with snow and put it on the wood stove. Fast. They scrambled to obey. I didn't have time to be gentle. My hands were already submerged in the thick, dark coat of the black wolf. He was massive, easily twice the size of any wolf in my former pack. His breathing was a ragged, wet rattle. He had been hit by silver-tipped arrows, and the wounds were festering at an unnatural speed. Stay with me, I whispered, leaning my face close to his ear. Don't you dare die in my kitchen. I closed my eyes and reached deep into that cold, dark place in my chest where I kept my secrets. My grandmother called it the life thread. It wasn't like regular wolf healing. It was a trade, a balance. To close a wound on another, I had to feel the tear in myself. I placed my palms over the largest wound on his flank. Give, I commanded my spirit. The pain hit me like a physical blow. It felt as if a white-hot iron was being pressed into my side. I gasped, my vision blurring, my stomach turning over. I could feel his agony, the burning of the silver, the exhaustion of a long hunt, the crushing weight of responsibility for the two boys behind me. "Miss, you're shaking," the older boy, a dark-haired kid named Leo, whispered. "I'm fine," I lied through gritted teeth. Under my hands, the flesh began to knit together. The black fur smoothed over. The alpha's breathing eased, shifting from a death rattle to a deep, rhythmic slumber. But as he grew stronger, I grew colder. My fingertips went numb. A dull ache started behind my eyes, the kind that whispered of a shortened lifespan. I pulled my hands away, gasping for air. I had closed the worst of it, but there were 4 more wounds. I looked at the boys. They were staring at me with a mix of awe and horror. "Who is he?" I asked, wiping my bloody hands on my apron. "He's our king," Leo whispered, his voice trembling. "And he's your mate, isn't he?" The world stopped spinning. I looked down at the unconscious man. I hadn't smelled it before because of the silver and the blood, but now, as the air cleared, it hit me. Sandalwood, rain-drenched earth, and a deep, primal pull that made my soul ache. He wasn't just an alpha. He was the High King of the Northern Territories. And he was the man the moon had chosen for a rejected, broken Omega like me. "No," I whispered, backing away until I hit the kitchen counter. "He can't be. I was rejected." I'm nothing." "He's not like the others," the younger boy, Toby, said, clutching a tattered blanket to his chest. "He's been looking for you. He said the moon made a mistake with your first pack, and he had to find the piece of him that was missing." I looked at the king's face. Even in sleep, he looked fierce, his jawline sharp enough to cut, his brow furrowed as if he were still fighting a war in his dreams. If he was the king, then the people hunting him weren't just rogues. They were usurpers. They were professional killers. And they were probably following the trail of blood straight to my door. I looked at my small, flimsy wooden door. It wouldn't hold against a gust of wind, let alone a pack of assassins. I looked at my hands. They were stained red, the skin pale and translucent from the life I had just given away. "We have to hide the scent," I said, my voice gaining a sudden, sharp clarity. "Leo, take the ash from the stove. Spread it over the porch where the blood is. Toby, help me move the rug over these floorboards." "What about you?" Leo asked. "I have to finish healing him," I said, even though my heart felt like it was slowing down to a crawl. "If he doesn't wake up by dawn, none of us are making it to breakfast." I knelt back down. I didn't care about the price anymore. I had lived a life of silence and shadows. If my last act was saving a king and 2 innocent boys, then maybe my life wasn't so useless after all. I pressed my hands to his chest again. "Give," I thought. "Take it all if you have to. Just let him live." The world turned to white fire, and then total darkness. The darkness wasn't empty. It was heavy, like being submerged in deep, freezing water. Every time I tried to pull myself back to the surface, the pain in my chest, the dead of the life thread, pulled me back down. I was fading, drifting away from my own body, until a hand gripped mine. It wasn't a physical hand. It was a tether of pure, golden energy that slammed me back into my skin. I bolted upright, a scream dying in my throat. The cabin was silent, save for the crackle of the wood stove. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky outside the window was that bruised, deep purple that precedes the dawn. I was lying on the floor, my head resting on a rolled-up horse blanket. "You're awake," a voice rumbled. It wasn't the high-pitched whisper of the boys. It was a sound that vibrated in my very marrow. I turned my head slowly. The black wolf was gone. In his place sat a man. He was leaning against my kitchen table, his chest bare and wrapped in the strips of linen I had sacrificed for my only good bedsheets. He was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous. His shoulders were broad enough to block out the light, and his eyes were a piercing, molten gold that seemed to read every secret written on my soul. I healed you," I croaked, my voice sounding like broken glass. You did more than heal me, little wolf, he said. He moved then, a predator's grace in every limb. He knelt beside me, and the scent of sandalwood and rain intensified until I felt dizzy. He reached out, his large, calloused hand cupping my jaw. You gave me your life force. I can feel your heart beating inside my chest. Why? I shivered under his touch. You were dying. The boys, they were scared. Most Omegas would have run. Most would have called their alpha to hand me over for a reward, he murmured, his thumb brushing over my lower lip. His touch sparked a fire that burned away the cold of the life thread. But you hit a king. Do you know the penalty for that in this territory? Death, I whispered. But I was already dead, Alpha. My pack rejected me. I've been a ghost for 2 years. You can't kill someone who doesn't exist. His eyes darkened, a low growl rippling through his chest. They rejected you? This pack is led by fools. You are a treasure beyond their comprehension. Before I could respond, the air in the room shifted. The hair on my arms stood up. The 2 boys, who had been sleeping in the corner, bolted upright. They're here, Leo hissed, his eyes wide with terror. The Alpha King stood up in one fluid motion. He didn't look like a wounded man anymore. He looked like a god of war. He grabbed a heavy iron poker from beside the stove. Get in the cellar, he commanded me, his voice dropping into a tone of absolute authority. No, I said, standing up on shaky legs. I could smell them now. The sharp, metallic scent of my own pack's enforcers. And behind them, the perfume of Sarah, the woman the Alpha had chosen to replace me. She was the one who had pushed for my exile. If they find you here, they'll burn this cabin to the ground with you inside. There's a hidden crawl space behind the pantry. Go. Now. I do not hide, the king growled. You're not at full strength. I snapped, surprising myself with my own boldness. The silver is still in your blood. If you fight now, you'll die, and my sacrifice will be for nothing. Please. Hide. Let me handle them. He stared at me for a heartbeat that felt like an eternity. He saw the determination in my eyes, the desperation. With a sharp nod, he ushered the boys into the small, cramped space behind the shelves. He followed them, his golden eyes fixed on mine until the door clicked shut. A second later, my front door was kicked off its hinges. The freezing wind howled into the room, bringing with it 3 large men and a woman dressed in expensive furs. Sarah stepped over the threshold, her nose wrinkled in disgust. The smell in here is pathetic, she sneered, looking around my meager kitchen. Smells like sickness and rot. What do you want, Sarah? I asked, my hands buried in the pockets of my apron, so she wouldn't see them shaking. Don't use my name, trash, she snapped. She walked toward me, her eyes landing on the blood-stained towels I hadn't had time to hide. She smiled, a cruel, sharp expression. The Alpha sensed a disturbance. Strange scents on the wind. And look at this, blood. You've been busy, haven't you, June? I cut myself, I said flatly. Cleaning a rabbit. She laughed, a high, mocking sound. She reached out and grabbed my hair, yanking my head back. Liar. You're hiding something. Or someone. The king's rebels were seen in these woods tonight. If you're harboring traitors, I'll personally watch them strip the skin from your back. She shoved me away, and I fell against the pantry door, the very door where the king was hiding. My heart stopped. I could feel the heat of him through the wood. Search the place, Sarah commanded the enforcers. Tear it apart. I watched in silent agony as they smashed my few dishes, ripped open my mattress, and overturned my table. Every second felt like a year. My eyes kept darting to the pantry, praying the boys wouldn't make a sound. One of the enforcers walked toward the pantry. Nothing in the main room, Luna. Just this closet left. He reached for the handle. Wait. I cried out. Sarah turned to me, her eyes glinting. Why? Is there something in there you don't want us to see, Omega? It's the meat. I lied, my brain racing. I have a deer in there. It's turned bad. The smell will make you sick. That's why the cabin smells so foul. The enforcer hesitated, his hand on the latch. Sarah pushed him aside. I don't care about the smell. Open it. She grabbed the handle and yanked. The door creaked open, the wood groaning as Sarah pulled it wide. I held my breath, my heart hammering so hard against my ribs that I was certain it would shatter. I had failed. I had sacrificed my life force only for them to be caught like rats in a trap. But as the door swung fully open, I gasped. The pantry was empty. There were no boys. No Alpha King. Just a few jars of pickled beets and a side of cured venison hanging from a hook, exactly as I had described. The hidden panel behind the shelving, a secret my grandfather had built during the Great War, was seamless. Even Sarah's sharp, predatory eyes couldn't see the hairline fracture in the wood. Sarah hissed, her face contorting in frustration. She grabbed a jar of beets and smashed it on the floor, the red liquid splashing like blood across my boots. You're lucky, Omega. But I know you're lying. I can smell the fear coming off you in waves. It's not fear, Sarah, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It's exhaustion. Now get out of my home. She stepped close to me, the scent of her expensive lavender perfume clashing with the metallic tang of the room. She leaned in, whispering into my ear, "The Alpha is coming here at dawn to inspect the borders himself. If I find even a hair of a stranger in these woods, I'll make sure he executes you personally. Enjoy your last few hours of breath." She turned on her heel and marched out, the enforcers following her and slamming what remained of my door into the frame. I collapsed to my knees, the strength finally leaving my legs. The room spun. The life thread was calling its dead again, and the cold was returning to my bones. The pantry panel slid open. The king stepped out first, followed by the two boys. He didn't look at the mess Sarah had made. He looked only at me. In an instant, he was at my side, his large hands catching me before my head hit the floorboards. "You stood your ground," he murmured. There was a new tone in his voice, respect. It was something I hadn't heard in years. "You protected your king while the blade was at your throat." "They're coming back," I whispered, clutching his forearm. His skin was hot, vibrating with the power I had returned to him. "At dawn. My Alpha, he's cruel. You have to leave. Take the boys and go north through the Black Stream. The scent of the water will hide you." "I am not leaving you behind to face his execution, June," the king said. He used my name. The way it sounded in his deep voice made me feel like I was more than just a broken Omega. "I can't run," I said, a tear finally escaping and trailing through the dried blood on my cheek. "I gave you too much. I'm too weak. I'll only slow you down, and then they'll catch all of us." The king's golden eyes flared. He picked me up as if I weighed nothing, cradling me against his massive chest. "Then I will carry you. My name is Silas, and I have spent 3 years searching for the soul that was stolen from me by a rejection. I did not find you just to watch you die in a shack." "Silas." I breathed, the name feeling like a prayer. "Sleep, June," he commanded softly. "The boys and I will watch the door. When the sun rises, the world will know who you truly are." I wanted to argue, but the darkness was too heavy. I leaned my head into the crook of his neck, inhaling the scent of rain and earth, and let go. I woke to the sound of horns. The grayback packs hunting horns. They were close, right at the edge of the clearing. I tried to sit up, but Silas held me firm. We were sitting on the floor in the corner of the cabin, hidden by the shadows. The two boys were awake, huddled together, their eyes fixed on the door. The sun was just beginning to bleed over the horizon, casting long, orange fingers through the cracks in my walls. "They're here," Leo whispered. "Let them come," Silas said. He wasn't holding the iron poker anymore. He was standing now, and though he was still shirtless, The wounds on his chest were nothing but faint, silvery scars. He looked like a mountain, immovable and ancient. A heavy knock thudded against the door. Not the kick of an enforcer, but the measured, arrogant knock of an alpha who owned everything he surveyed. June. Alpha Miller's voice boomed. Open this door. Sarah says you've been hosting guests. I don't like guests in my woods. Silas looked at me. Do you want to open it or shall I? I'll do it, I said, my voice surprising me. I felt different. The life thread usually left me hollow, but Silas's proximity was acting like a battery. I felt a strange, humming warmth in my veins. I walked to the door. I pulled it open. Alpha Miller stood there, flanked by 20 armed enforcers. Sarah was at his side, looking smug. Miller was a large man, but compared to the presence of the man standing in my kitchen, he looked small.
Petty.
Well, Miller sneered, looking at my disheveled hair and stained apron. The ghost finally speaks. Where are they, June? Sarah says there's blood everywhere. The only blood here is mine, Miller, I said, refusing to call him Alpha. His eyes narrowed. You dare address me by name? You're a rejected stray. You live because I allow it. Now move aside, so I can burn this filth. He moved to shove me, but he stopped midair. The air in the clearing suddenly became heavy. The horses of the enforcers began to whinny and rear back in terror. The birds in the trees went silent. Silas stepped out from the shadows of the kitchen. He didn't shift. He didn't growl. He simply walked into the light of the doorway, and the sheer pressure of his aura forced Miller to take 3 steps back. Some of the enforcers dropped to their knees immediately, their wolves recognizing the true king. You were saying something about burning? Silas asked, his voice low and vibrating with a power that made the ground tremble. Miller's face went pale. His jaw dropped. Hi, King. Silas? Your Majesty, we had reports of rogues. We didn't know you were. Why are you in this Omega shack? This shack is a sanctuary, Silas said, stepping onto the porch. He put an arm around my waist and pulled me flush against his side. And this woman is the reason your king still breathes. She gave her own life force to save mine while you were busy, inspecting borders and harassing your own people. Sarah stepped forward, her face a mask of jealousy. Your Majesty, you've been deceived. She's a rejected Omega. She's useless. She probably used some dark magic to trick you. Silas's head snapped toward her. The golden glow in his eyes intensified until they looked like twin suns. She didn't trick me. She is me. The moon didn't make a mistake when it paired her with a pathetic cur like Miller. It gave her a trial so that she would be ready to lead a kingdom, not just a pack. Silas looked down at Miller, who was now trembling. By the law of the High Throne, I declare this pack's leadership forfeit for the attempted assassination of a royal and the mistreatment of a fated mate. Attempted assassination? Miller stammered. I had nothing to do with the rogues. The silver arrows that struck me were marked with your family's crest, Miller, Silas growled. Did you think I wouldn't check? The enforcers turned on Miller. The transition was instant. In the wolf world, strength and truth were everything. Their alpha had tried to kill the king. Their alpha had rejected the woman who saved the king. June, Silas said, turning to me in front of everyone. You have lived in the shadows long enough. He knelt. The High King of the United States, the man who ruled over 1,000 packs, knelt in the mud of a Maine forest before a useless Omega. Will you leave this forest and reign at my side? Will you be the Luna of all Lunas? The silence was absolute. I looked at Sarah, who was shaking with rage. I looked at Miller, who was ruined. Then I looked at the 2 boys, Leo and Toby, who were smiling at me from the doorway. I will, I said, my voice echoing through the trees. The journey from the edge of the forest to the heart of the packlands felt like a dream, but the air was still thick with the scent of impending rain. Silas refused to let me walk. He carried me toward the pack house, his arms a fortress of warmth. Behind us, the grayback enforcers marched in a stunned, respectful silence, while Miller and Sarah were led in chains by Silas's two young protectors, who had shifted back into their wolf forms to guard the rear. But as we approached the grand stone steps of the Pack Manor, I felt a sharp, icy tether pull at my heart. My vision blurred. "Silas," I whispered, clutching his shoulder. "Something is wrong." He stopped instantly, his golden eyes searching mine. "The debt," he growled, his voice laced with a fear I hadn't heard before. "The life you gave me, it's calling for more." The life thread was a cruel master. By using it to heal a king, I hadn't just used my energy. I had linked our souls. And because his power was so immense, my small, Omega body was struggling to anchor the connection. I felt my temperature drop. The world began to gray at the edges. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air. Sarah had broken free from her guards. She didn't run for the forest. She ran for me. In her hand was a small, jagged dagger, the blade coated in the dull, sickly sheen of wolfsbane. "If I can't be Luna, no one will," she shrieked. Silas moved with a speed that defied the laws of physics, but I felt the shift in the air. I saw the blade's trajectory. If he moved to block her, he would have to drop me, and in my weakened state, the fall alone might stop my heart. "Give," my soul whispered. I didn't use the magic to heal this time. I used it to push. I reached out with a burst of raw, white energy, slamming an invisible wall against Sarah. She was thrown back 30 feet, hitting the stone wall of the manor with a sickening thud. The effort cost me everything. I felt my heart skip a beat, then another. My lungs refused to take in air. "June."
"No."
Silas roared. He collapsed to the ground with me, pulling me into his lap. He ripped his own palm open with a claw and pressed it against my lips.
"Drink. Take it back."
"Take my strength, June. That is a royal command." The blood tasted like copper and ancient forests. As it hit my tongue, the golden light of the king's soul flooded back into me. It wasn't a trade this time, it was a sharing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just an Omega giving herself away. I was a Luna receiving the devotion of her Alpha. The gray faded. My heart found its rhythm again, beating in perfect synchronization with the giant holding me. "I'm here," I breathed, my hand shaking as I touched his cheek. "I'm not leaving you." Silas buried his face in my neck, his shoulders shaking with a single, ragged sob of relief. Around us, the pack members who had gathered to watch the execution of an Omega were now bowing their heads in shame. They had witnessed the useless girl defend their king with a power they couldn't comprehend. "Take them to the cells," Silas commanded, his voice returning to its iron chill as he looked at Miller and Sarah. "And bring the healers. Not for me. For my queen." 1 week later, the cabin in the woods was gone. In its place stood a monument of stone and flowers, a reminder of where the king had found his heart. I stood in the grand ballroom of the Northern Palace, draped in silks the color of the midnight sky. My white hair, once a symbol of my ghostly status, was now braided with diamonds and sprigs of mountain laurel. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were bright, her skin glowing with a health that felt permanent. A heavy knock sounded on the door. "Enter," I said. Leo and Toby walked in, dressed in the formal livery of the Royal Guard. They looked taller, better fed, and for the first time, happy. "The people are waiting, Luna," Leo said, bowing low. "The Alpha King says if you're not ready, he'll burn the palace down, and we can all just go back to the cabin. He's getting impatient." I laughed, a sound that felt foreign but wonderful. "Tell him I'm coming." I walked down the long corridor, my footsteps echoing on the marble. When the double doors opened, a roar of sound hit me. Thousands of wolves from every pack in the territory were gathered, their voices raised in a rhythmic chant, that shook the rafters. Silas stood at the end of the hall, wearing the black and gold of his lineage. When he saw me, the stern mask he wore for the world crumbled. He walked down the steps of the throne to meet me halfway, an unheard-of gesture for a king. He took my hands in his thumbs rubbing over the scars on my palms where the life thread had once burned. "You saved a cub," he whispered so only I could hear. "You saved a king. Now you save a kingdom." He turned me toward the crowd. He took the heavy gold crown from the velvet cushion and placed it on my head. "I give you your Luna," he bellowed. "The life weaver, the heart of the North. Let any man who doubts her strength remember the blood she gave to keep your king alive." The howl that followed was deafening. It wasn't the howl of a pack hunting prey. It was the howl of a people who had finally found their soul. I looked out at the sea of faces, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't a rejected Omega. I wasn't a ghost. I was home. The moon was full over the Maine wilderness, casting a silver glow over the snow-capped peaks. Silas and I stood on the balcony of our private chambers, watching the forest we had both nearly died in. Inside, the two boys were curled up by the fireplace, safe and warm. The peace was absolute, but I knew our journey was just beginning. There were other ghosts out there, other Omegas and outcasts who had been told they were nothing. "What are you thinking about?" Silas asked, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind and pulling me back against his chest. "I'm thinking about the cabin," I said softly. "And how many others are sitting in the dark right now, waiting for someone to see them." Silas kissed the top of my head. "Then we will find them, together." I leaned back into him, watching the stars. The life thread between us was hummed with a quiet, steady strength. I had used my last strength to save a wolf cub, and in return, the universe had given me the world. I truly hope this story moved you. Now I want to hear from you. Which part of the story did you find the most intriguing? Was it the moment June realized Silas was her fated mate in the middle of a bloodbath, or the scene where she used her forbidden magic to blast Sarah away from the king? Do you think June should have been more or less forgiving toward her old pack? Please let me know in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your subscription is a huge support and truly means the world to me, especially since this channel is still young and trying to grow. It's because of viewers like you that I can keep telling these stories. I'll see you in the next one.